Hello, I'm Rami,
And this is Dakota.
and you're listening to Leveling Duo, the podcast where two friends talk about video games they really enjoy. Dakota, what are you talking about today?
Well, today I think I was going to talk about one of my more favorite, top tier, in my opinion, PS2 era games, Dragon Quest VIII, Journey of the Cursed King, which is actually my introduction to the Dragon Quest games.
I've heard a little about this game, but not much.
I remember when I got it the year that it was released in 2014, come out in the spring, but I think I had to wait like a month or two later to get it. At the time, it was just kind of hard to get to the store because I had to wait for a ride.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun. The main thing that kind of drove me to it was, I was a, Dragon Ball Z fan growing up, and Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball and, author, illustrator, is also the illustrator and character designer for the Dragon Quest series of games. Has been since their inception, I believe.
I'm pretty sure that he has been.
He's not the only artist, but he is the main artist. And I will attempt to pronounce the other artists' names. And I apologize for any of our listeners if I completely messed this up, so please don't judge me too harshly. Aside from Akira Toriyama, you have Takayuki Samashima and Kazunari Matsuo. Those are your three artists that worked on the game, and the developers were Level 5 and for the original PS2 release, and then there was a re-release on 3DS by Square Enix, which Square Enix was also the original publisher.
Okay. I know Square Enix because I played Octopath Traveler a bit. And, of course, I know from Dragon Quest, but I don't know much else about them. I almost bought Octopath 2 today. I was at the GameStop.
Well, I've heard, good things about Octopath. But the Dragon Quest VIII game, like all the other Dragon Quests and the original trilogy, Dragon Warrior, is a kind of classic turn-based JRPG. Follows a fairly linear storyline. You have a main story, follow through the adventure. Typically, you start off with a small party, only one, maybe two people. And then as your adventure goes, trying to quest after the big bad, trying to find the items that you need to, defeat the big bad. You get more party members, get stronger, and inadvertently there's usually some sort of secret history about the main protagonist that is found out through the course of the game, which also, too, like most Dragon Quest games, from the way I understand the workings of them, because my main experiences have been with 8 and 11. I haven't really touched too much on the other ones, at least not to the point of completion. Typically, there's a quote-unquote, main ending that you play through, too, and then there's a quote-unquote post-game portion that you can play through and then achieve the true ending of the game. In the case of 8, essentially, the way the story kind of starts off in the cutscene, which I do love the cutscenes, by the way, voice acting included. Though the original first main big bad that you travel after is a court jester of the Kingdom of Trodain named Dul Magus, who steals a sealed scepter out of the castle that turned out to be cursed to gain power, and ended up casting a really powerful cursed spell on the entirety of Trodain Castle, turning the king into a troll and the princess, and the king's name is Trode, by the way.
Okay.
Turns into a troll, but he looks kind of more like a toad. And then the princess Medea into a horse.
Medea.
Mm-hmm.
I like that name.
And the rest of the inhabitants were turned into thorny vines and plants. The only person that was left unaffected by the spell was the main protagonist, a lowly guard of the castle, who you play as, and you go kind of rescue the king and the princess, and you set on a quest to track down Dul Magus and to try to break the spell on the kingdom and the king and the princess.
Yeah.
Through the course of your adventures in this iteration of Dragon Quest, you're joined by Yangus, a bandit, who, you save kind of pre-game in a cutscene, and you kind of changes his ways. You're just like, oh, you have my life. So, He's got a pretty funny, I think the term is a Cockney accent.
Like the real British slang, not proper English.
Yeah,
speaking.
he's just like, he's all bruv this,
Yeah.
and, he doesn't fully pronounce a lot of his words and syllables.
Okay.
But he's kind of like more your like tanky character in the group. Then you're joined by Jessica, who is a mage that is on a quest to avenge her brother who died.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally Angelo, who is a kind of a playboy Templar knight that has a bad habit of flirting and gambling. And basically, and he joins because, story spoilers, the abbot at his abbey that essentially raised him is killed by Dulmagus' schemes, and so joins the party in a quest to avenge the abbot. From there, basically, you're just going to travel through different kingdoms, different type of environments, finding different monsters, clearing dungeons, leveling up, gaining different abilities. In this iteration of the game, each character has different skill trees that they can put their skill points into that they gain from leveling up or consuming what's known as a seed of skill, which usually attributes just one skill point per consumption, and they're kind of hard to come by. And essentially, all the characters have kind of real base trees. They all have access to a tree called fisticuffs, where essentially it's just all unarmed combat.
I was going to say, that sounds exactly what it is.
Then each of them also have a unique tree that only they have access to. The main hero, his is bravery. And that kind of gives him access to, quote-unquote, main protagonist abilities in Dragon Quest, which is lightning-based magic, and typically stuff to, dispel curses, kind of holy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then, Jessica gets sex appeal, and Angelo gets, charm, charisma, or chivalry, something like that, which is basically the male version of sex appeal. And then Yangus, he gets flails. Also too, each character has specific weapons that they have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And in Dragon Quest VIII, each character has essentially 2 different kinds of weapons that they can equip. The main hero can equip swords and boomerangs. Yangus can do clubs and axes, which flails are on the very end of clubs. It's kind of like a specialty at the very end of the tree thing. Then Angelo has swords and bows, which I usually go the bow route with him. And then Jessica has whips, I think maybe daggers, I think.
That sounds like it should be
I don't know, it was a really fun game. I really enjoyed the story. As you travel through, you find out that Dulmagus is slowly going and killing the descendants of the ancient sages. Though you're not exactly sure, why he's doing this, until actually, in the mid-game, you actually finally confront Dulmagus, and you actually defeat him. However, upon defeating him, unfortunately, you find out that the curse isn't broken. And then, Jessica, in the party, picks up the scepter that Dulmagus had, and then the party goes back to town, but then when you wake up the next day, Jessica is gone. And you don't know why she left or anything like that. Then you hear of her, being sighted, basically the next area that you go to, and that's where you encounter the next descendant of the sages, and she is actually on a quest to defeat or kill the next one. And at that point, that's when you as the player, you kind of figure out that the scepter itself is cursed and is more likely possessing whoever holds it, and is actually the originator of the curse. That's why it hasn't been broken yet. Well, you defeat Jessica, she comes back to her senses, and then and you save the sage's descendant, but then unfortunately, in the area that you're in, the house where you're at, the owner's dog, which is already a mean dog anyway, or at least is portrayed as being a mean dog, not very nice, inadvertently picks up the scepter and is then possessed by the spirit within the scepter, which at this point is actually the vessel for the spirit of Rapthorn, the Lord of Darkness, that was actually sealed by the 7 sages long ago. And essentially it's kind of like the classic, the sages cast the spell, their bloodline is what keeps it intact, and by killing the descendants. Once all descendants are killed, then the scepter will, the seal will break and Rapthorn will be free.
Not really an ideal situation.
Yeah. And that basically Rapthorn is the reason why the curse is maintained.
Okay.
Unfortunately, like I said, the dog picks up the scepter, then kills the descendant that you just saved, then sprouts wings and kind of turns into like a demonic dog. You fight it, feed it, then it flies away. Then you go and come across kind of like I guess you would kind of like equate him like to the real world as basically kind of like being the Pope. He's like the highest religious part of the church in the game.
Okay.
And he is one of the last descendants of the sages. Well, unfortunately, the scepter, after you defeat the dog, is then picked up by Angelo's half-brother, who is extremely power-hungry and ambitious, but is actually able to resist Rapthorn's influence, but have access to the power. And he actually, spoilers, kills, I think it's like the High Archbishop or something like that, is what they call him. And so that way he can assume more power in the church and everything, and basically trying to get back at Angelo because of stuff in childhood, which, if you play the game, you find out about the backstory there. Unfortunately, you fight Marcello, and when you defeat him, because he was the only thing that was kind of like containing Rapthorn, once you defeat him, it fully releases his spirit, which then seeks out his body, which actually turns out to be sealed inside the stone giant statue of the goddess in the Holy City, in a nice little twist of fate, I guess.
Yeah.
And then proceeds to basically float up into the sky as a giant dark blob of evil and cast darkness upon the world. And that's when you, in another kind of like tick for most Dragon Quest games, you seek out, like usually like some sort of like godly or holy beast or animal to kind of like aid you in getting where you need to go. When it comes to like travel in the game, I will say the majority of it is done on foot or horseback for like greater speeds until you unlock fast travel. But then to explore more of the world, you end up getting access to a ship, which lets you travel across water. And then usually the final thing in the game that you have access to is flight, which typically just allows you to fast travel, but just not instantaneously. But it also gives you access to like previously unavailable areas. In this case, you come across this island that you couldn't get access to earlier in the game. And that's where you make contact with the god bird. I believe it's pronounced Amphiria. And joining forces with her, you face Rapthorn and defeat him.
Sounds like quite the feat.
Then that releases the curse. The king and the princess go back to normal. Everyone kind of like travels back home. A couple of months pass by, and then the next part of the game has to do with actually Medea. Because there's a whole thing where Medea is promised to the Prince of Argonia, which is an adjacent kingdom to Trodain, because of like an ancient, well, not really ancient, but basically the two current kings of Trodain and Argonia respectively, their parents, I think it was Trodain's mother and the Argonians' father, were actually in love with each other, but because of political time and strife at the time, it was kind of like a forbidden love kind of thing, so they couldn't be together. They had arranged marriages and had to do their thing for their kingdoms. But they made a promise with each other once they came into power and everything like that between the two royal families, that even though they could not be together, if in their lineage, if a suitable boy and girl were born on each respective side of the family, they would be wed to consummate their love that they never got to do. And she unfortunately gets essentially engaged to a very pompous, bratty little guy from Argonia, and you actually like help him out and stuff, and like he's extremely cowardly and weak and extremely pompous, snobby, all those things.
All the bad stuff.
Yeah, all the bad qualities you typically assume with someone that's like a spoiled royal brat. I won't get into like the full backstory with him, play the game if you want to know. It's a nice little quest though. That's when you kind of get more into like the actual like dragon enemies in the game. Because up until that point, the first ability that the hero gets in Swords is Dragon Slash, but you don't hardly come across any dragon-type monsters until this point in the game. So you finally get to utilize an ability that
you've stored for a while.
Yes. You come to find out, which also too, a little tidbit, that the hero in the game has a little pet mouse named Chewy
Oh, that's adorable.
that travels in his pocket and stuff, but like you can feed him different kinds of cheeses that you can make in the game during battle, and he can spew like different kinds of breath attacks, whether they be like stuff that deal damage or buff or debuff or heal.
I mean, that's fairly useful.
So, you know, like, and it's just kind of like in the game, just like, oh, like he's just a really like cool special mouse.
Yeah.
Well, in the post game, you come to find out that he is actually the hero's grandfather. That was he transformed himself into a mouse, and that his grandfather is of a race of beings known as Draconians, who are actually dragons that can take human form, and that the hero's parents were actually a prince of Argonia and a woman, or Chewy's daughter, a draconian woman from their secret village. And because she had wandered out into the real world, had gotten like attacked by monsters, and he saved her. They spent time together, fell in love, all that good stuff. Well, as being like a prince of Argonia, you know, like he had like responsibilities and stuff, but he wanted to marry her and make her his queen because he was like first in line for the throne. Well, because of draconian law, she had to return to the village and was forbidden from being able to see him again. Well, there is a path that is available to you to take in the post-game, which is where the strongest enemies in the game are available. They have the highest level, highest HP, highest defense, all that stuff. And it's very perilous, so unless you're like appropriately leveled, you know, when you go there, like it's very easy to die, trust me. My first time, died quite a bit before I went through. Well, as the story goes, the hero's father, in an effort to try to get his wife back, because they actually did get married before she went back, made his way to the Dracovian path and tried to make his way to the village to try to get her back, or win her back, or talk to somebody about trying to release her to him. Well, unfortunately, he died of wounds sustained just outside of the village on the path. He almost made it, but unfortunately died. When his body was discovered, it broke her heart, and inadvertently ended up killing her in the long run.
Oh.
But before she died, she gave birth to their son, which is you, the hero, in the game. And he's supposed to be apparently a first in history where he's half human and half Dracovian, so like he's half dragon. He's raised for a few years by Chewy and everything, but then the kind of like the chief of the village, or the king, if you want to call him that. I think he was actually called the king of the Dracovians, the strongest of them all, or Lord. Maybe it was Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Something lofty. Anyway, it was decreed that because he was half human, that he had to be expelled from the village. And this is when he was still just like, you know, a small child. Well, his grandfather objected, you know, saying blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. Well, the Lord of Dracovians was pretty hardcore on, like, he has to go because, you know, he's half human and doesn't belong in the village. And so the grandfather was just like, okay, well, I'd like to join him in exile. And, well, the Lord Dracovians pretty much is, from what I remember, says, well, part of the reason why, like, I don't want you to do that is because, you know, is secrecy. Because one thing is that, like, along with being exiled from the village as a child, the Lord of Dracovians also placed a curse upon him, which completely wiped his memory of everything of the village. So that way, you know, he couldn't accidentally reveal anything.
Yeah.
Well, when that happened, that also inadvertently was a curse that also prevented him from being cursed by anything else. Because see, sometimes during battle, whenever like someone, an enemy would like try to like curse the hero in the party, whenever it specifically was a curse, sometimes other party members would be affected, but there would be like a white glowing shield with like a dragon crest on it that would like pop up that would like block the curse for the hero.
Yeah.
Which early in the game, it never explained it, it just would spontaneously happen. Later on, after you find this out post-game, that makes a lot more sense. Because that's literally the curse of the Lord of the Dracovians that is actually kicking in to prevent any other curse from taking effect.
It's kind of useful in that case.
Which, if you think about it in a way, I guess that was the Lord of Dracovian's way of trying to do a parting gift for the child. You know, like, I'm having to do this so that way you can't say anything about us, but at the same time, it will also help you out in the future. Which actually makes a big deal, because that's the reason why he was unaffected by Rapthorn's curse at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it hadn't been for that, honestly, in this turn of events, if the Lord of Dracovians had not cursed the hero and expelled him from the village, Rapthorn would have ended up ruling / destroying the world in the long run.
So it's really good you got that curse. It's
Yes.
just a roundabout way of saying that.
The hero gets a really cool ability when he hits level 65, which, by the way, is extremely hard to get to. And for those of you that play JRPGs, know what I mean when you get high level like that. I believe it's called Dragon Soul. It's probably the coolest, most visually stunning attack in the game. And the characters also have an ability where they, quote-unquote, psych themselves up. Gives them a multiplier to their stats, and it has varying degrees of level. Start off like 5, then it's 20, then it's 50. Early levels, you cannot get past 50. But once you hit, I think it's level maybe 12. For those of you that are listening, if you know for sure, you can reply with the correct number below if you would like. But essentially, you can psych up to 100, which at that point, essentially, each of your party members can, for Dragon Ball Z reference, go Super Saiyan, especially the first character. The main hero, he wears a bandana most of the time, but when he goes 100, psych 100 for the first time, it kind of like does like a little like cutscene mid-battle, and it kind of like zooms in on him and spins around. And he literally does like the whole like Dragon Ball pose where like he throws his arms up in X in front of him, then slams him down to the side, and he like powers up, and it's got like a Vegeta purple glow to it, but then his hair gets all spiky. Like he goes from looking like a happy Goku to a pissed off Trunks very quickly.
That's quite a leap.
Oh yeah.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but I know I miss Trunks.
Like think original Trunks when he very first came back and sliced Frieza. Like he goes from happy Goku to that very quickly.
Just before the whole Android fiasco.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like I pumped probably 300 plus hours into the game, just kind of like messing around, playing, replaying, just trying different things, well, I mean, like I said, it's a very linear game, so there's not exactly a whole lot of deviation that you can do, but other than like maybe try different kind of like skill trees, just to try different kinds of playthroughs. Personally, I always went with, because when you get high enough level without max level, it's not too hard to max out 2 skill trees for each character. But to completely max out all 3, you would need to, 1, max out each character level, and on top of that, also need to find the appropriate number of seeds of skill to accumulate enough extra skill points to max everything out. But for the hero, I would typically do swords and bravery. Then for Jessica, it was usually sex appeal and whips. Angelo would be his charisma and his bows. And then for Yangus, I would do his axes, and I can't remember exactly what it was called. Maybe it was like humanity or something, maybe? Because like it dealt with like his ability like to make friends. I remember the ultimate ability in that, like he called in, like he was just like, the whole thing was he would all of a sudden like shoo everyone out of the way, and he was just like, come on everybody, and then like everyone that you'd met throughout the game would like just rush in as like a mob and just like beat and would just like beat the fuck up out of like whatever it was, and that was like his ultimate ability in that skill tree.
I would call it rally, but it's hard to tell what it really is.
But I mean, like it was a lot of fun, all things considered.
It sounds fun. I wish I could get into them. It's the grind that I can't.
I mean, it's definitely like along the mentality of like there's a certain level of grind to it, but you don't have to like hardcore grind in the game to play it, if that makes sense. I mean, like there's a degree of grinding here and there just to get strong enough to advance. But if you don't mind like some strategy and a little bit of struggle here and there, it's really not that bad. Though, like with any other JRPG, to an extent, you can kind of cheese them by over-leveling early, and then simply as you progress through the game, defeating bosses. Because most bosses, in my experience, are designed to have enough XP to give at least 1 or 2 level bumps per party member when you defeat them, appropriately for that time, unless they're over-leveled. So, like, say if your beginning area, like, they expect you by the time you leave it to be level 10, if you instead, like, level up to, say, 20, then not only will you be over-leveled going into the next area, and it would be easier, but as you defeat bosses easier and easier, you'll be able to level up a little bit faster that way, and quote-unquote move through the game more quickly as well. Because if you're more interested in trying to kind of not necessarily breeze the story, but have the story be a little bit more streamlined without having to like stop here and there to grind, you can just do an early grind, hardcore at the very beginning, and then just kind of like somewhat breeze your way through the majority of the rest of it.
I attempted that in the newest one.
Yeah, it's just that, like, when you try to do it early game, unless you just have the patience for it, it can get extremely monotonous. But that's when, like, little, tricks and tips come in. Like knowing, like, which enemies to farm, which areas to go to, and how to quicken that pace as quickly as possible. Similar to the Iron Dagger trick in Skyrim at the very beginning.
Build up those iron skills, then you have Daedric and Draconic in no time.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, like, you're flooding the market with legendary grade iron daggers.
I never actually took the time to upgrade them.
See, if there would be one mod that I would ever, add to a Skyrim game, would probably be, real-time economy. Literally just have it introduced in the game to where, if I flooded the market with iron daggers, their value just went down.
Coming up next is gold rings.
Or I buy up everything from everybody in the world, and all of a sudden, this price of it skyrockets.
They're going to want to know how to melt down iron daggers again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult. I wish they gave us an option to do that.
It kind of reminds me of the one webtoon that me and you've been reading, the plus 99 reinforced stick.
Yeah.
Whenever he farms all those ascended weapons and stuff and then sells them all to, be rich.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of crashed the economy in-game because of that. The overall value of all those mythical great items went down.
It's in a weird spot right now, but that's neither here nor there. But he did ruin the economies.
But, as a whole, I think it's a really fun game. It's got some colorful characters, really nice art, and what's it called? The Tokyo Grand Orchestra?
Symphony Orchestra?
Symphony Orchestra.
I don't know exactly.
No disrespect to the group. I just can't think of their proper title off the top of my head here. But they are contracted to be the essentially main and only producers of the music for the Dragon Quest series.
That changed when the new one came out for a while, and people got real mad.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to add both of them into the special edition that came out.
Oh, yeah. But I do definitely recommend playing the game. They do have the 3DS version, which added some extra features and story and playable characters.
Plus a $128 price tag.
Yeah, it is a little pricey, if you want to go that route.
And 70 cents.
Just tack on the cents.
Yeah.
The main difference, as far as I remember with the 3DS version, is that it added some extra quest story with Mori, who's the proprietor of the Monster Arena in-game, which there's a small side quest you can do there, which lets you become a kind of like a monster tamer, but essentially what you are is that you're the owner of a monster team. And there's special monsters throughout the world that you can find, because for the most part in the overworld, everything is random encounter. You're just running through the world, and all of a sudden you'll just, music will take off. You get a little zip cut scene similar to what you remember from Pokemon back in the day. Exactly. And then, you go into your battle scene, you do the fight, then you go back to the overworld. Well, whenever you see an actual monster in the overworld, that is a specialty unique monster. They're typically extra powerful, harder to kill, but when you do kill them, they have different grades of copper, silver, and gold, and they drop a coin appropriate to that rank that you can then sell for money. But once you become a owner of a monster team, when you defeat these monsters, they're named monsters, and you can actually recruit them to your team. And then the hero can get an ability later on if you go through the monster arena that allows you to actually call your team into battle and kind of give your party members a break for a minute and allow them to absorb some damage and also dish out some damage to a powerful enemy.
Yeah, it's basically Pokemon when you got a monster team.
Mm-hmm. Then the other character is a character named Red, who is an old associate of Yangus that you run into early game. Later on, she was known to give you a special flail, which was a powerful weapon that was only equipable by Yangus. But in the 3DS version, I believe she actually becomes a character that you can add to your party, along with Mori. So instead of just having 4, you were now able to have 6, and were able to interchange your characters out somewhat.
They had to have a reason to sell it on the DS.
Exactly. Other than just, trying to do a 3DS version.
Unfortunately, the DS shop is down, so you can't buy it discounted on their shop or anything.
Of course.
So we'll add a link to the PS2 version and the overpriced DS version from Amazon because we're Amazon associates.
As far as, like I said before, if you have any interest in those kinds of games, definitely recommend giving Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King a try. It's definitely my favorite Dragon Quest, story-wise, gameplay-wise and everything. Maybe because it was my introduction to the series, but it's just the one that I've had the most fond memories playing, especially from back in the day.
I like Dragon Quest. I wish I could really get into one. I try. I love to watch somebody play it, but I just can't. I just can't do it very long myself. I do it for 2 or 3 days, and then I kick myself for buying it again. But that's just me and a JRPG thing, not a Dragon Quest problem.
Well, I mean, like, it's, again, you know, like, you got those like yourself that may just not be really into that kind of game. But, I mean, hey, even if you're not interested maybe so much in playing it, I'm sure there's plenty of Let's Plays out there, you know, for people that may want to play it. And one day, possibly, if we can get our stream part of our network up and going, maybe one day I can try to do a playthrough for y'all.
I would watch that. We have a Linktree link in the description of our YouTube channels, episodes, or even on the podcast episodes. There'll be a Linktree link, and inside it we'll have our YouTube channel, our website for all the Gruesome Gaming Groups podcasts, and all of our social links. Any of the social links will keep you informed on that, and you can contact us on that as well. So if you want to reach out, tell us what you think. Also, if you just like to leave a review on YouTube or on your podcast app, we'd love to hear that. We have 2 other podcasts besides this one. My sister and I do Brother Knows Quest. It's a podcast where I bring a random tabletop role-playing game and talk about it, and she tells me what she thinks of it after taking some notes while I'm talking. Horrific History and Hauntings, everything you need to know about that is in the name. We cover horrific history or hauntings, stuff like that, and it's my sister telling me about these events. And I usually have something to say here and there inside the podcast. If you want to leave a tip, the website for all the podcasts in that link tree will have a tip option for each of the episodes.
Yep, anything and everything is appreciated, guys, little or big. And as always, I do encourage you guys to give us some feedback. Tell us if there's anything you like hearing about specifically, maybe want to hear more about, maybe go in more depth about, or maybe there's anything that y'all would like us to talk about specifically.
Or if you just want to say hi.
Yeah, or just say hi, you know, I mean, like, between me, Raimi, Beth, you know, like, we would like to try to interact with y'all a little bit and just, you know, try to build up a community, you know, like, we're just a couple of friends, you know, trying to do a podcast, have some fun while we're doing it, and hopefully maybe build a community, and one day maybe possibly make a living out of it.
Yep, that's the dream, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like working in the kitchen. I love to cook, but...
You'd rather make it more of a hobby than
yes,
a reliable income.
Preferably. But you never know, it's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
No hating on any cooks out there. All the respect, those of you in the industry.
I've been Raimi.
And this has been Dakota.
You've been listening to Leveling Duo. Logging off.
Logging off.